welcome everybody to a new edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim or UFO Man, and to my side is my co-host Tommy Highway. Tommy,
Folks, I'm Tommy Highway. I want to thank everybody for coming out. As always, have two very special guests for you this evening. The first one is Mr. Thom Reed. He's one of our very favorite ufologists. You've seen him on the program before. Thom, welcome to be with us this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you, sir. And we've also have somebody else that's very, very special. Her name is Melanie Kirchdorfer, and she's a lifelong experiencer. She's from Great Barrington, Massachusetts area, and she's had abduction experiences and all kinds of strange experiences with the Greys since childhood. She's actually been featured on Unsolved Mysteries as well as all kinds of other programs. It is my honor and our great pleasure to bring you Melanie Kirchdorfer. Melanie, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. And Thom, it's good to see you again. I miss you. It's been a long time. So thanks for having me.
Tom, you need to adjust your mic.
I'm sorry?
Adjust your mic up a little bit.
Okay. How's that?
A little better, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, that's better. So welcome both of you. Tonight we're talking to Melanie Kirchdorfer. Thom recommended that she come on the show and share her experiences with everybody. Melanie is a super cool lady. I've been talking to her for quite some time. And so the first question for this evening is this, Melanie. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Where you live, not your address, but we just need the area in Massachusetts where you're from and where your experiences started. And then could you go into a little bit about your first experience?
Okay, of course. Okay, I live in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. I'm sure everyone knows of it as Norman Rockwell's town. You're all familiar with the Norman Rockwell paintings. Of course, it's a lot more famous for other things as well. So I'm blessed to be here in Norman Rockwell's town of Stockbridge, Mass. And I live in the middle of the woods. I have 3 dogs, lots of chickens, 2 cats, one sitting on my lap right now. And I'm retired. I'm going to be 65 this year. I taught art workshops for a long time in the area. For camps and for schools and for different groups in this area for many years. And I have 3 children, all boys, 2 grandchildren that live around here, 3 that are in Australia. And I've been married for 45 years. I've been with my husband for 47. And I love to travel, although I haven't in 2.5 years now. But I have 2 trips in the future, very near future, and I'm looking forward to it. And I've been an experiencer since I was 2 years old. It started, and I'd be happy to tell you or answer any questions that you have.
Okay, Tommy.
Fantastic. Well, I guess let's go ahead and if we could start from the beginning. I mean, when did these experiences start? How did they start? And if you maybe elaborate on exactly what these experiences entailed.
Well, my recollection that I can remember the most is when I was 4 years old. But I know that it started at 2 years old because I remember my mother telling me that as a young child, it has to have to do with this, that she had sent me to my room at 2 and she checked in on me and she found me wrapping a clothespin up and I was sticking pins in it. And she asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "This is you and I want to hurt you." And I said to her afterwards, when she was telling me this as I was older, I said, "But Mom, it's impossible that I would know anything about voodoo at 2. So obviously someone had been doing that to me, sticking things in me at 2, because there's no way that I would know anything about voodoo at 2, because in 1959, I would have been 2. We didn't have television back then to learn about voodoo at 2. So
Right.
It had to have been happening then at 2. And then my recollection is at 4, when I lived in Great Barrington on a street that was really close to Housatonic River. Because I don't know if when you spoke with Thom, he told you all of these incidences take place around water. It's always around the Housatonic River, Lake Mansfield, around ponds in the area. That's Lake Mansfield. So many people around here have had incidences happen around Housatonic River or Lake Mansfield. I've been interviewing people that it's been taking place around Lake Mansfield. So many people in this area. Around the Monument Mountain area, because there's ponds around Monument Mountain. Always around water. So these little gray men would come into my room, especially one. My sister also saw it. She claims it looked like a troll. It did not look like a troll to me. It looked like the little gray men. They were not wearing blue, the one that I saw. And they would come into my room and take me up through the attic. The attic was in my room. It was a closet. Take me up through the attic that was in my room in the closet and levitate me out through the window, down the Housatonic River, and I can still see it to this day because I can see what's now Walgreens. I can still see the back of what was then Melvin's drugstore. I can still see it. You can't move your head, but you can move your eyes. And I can see it just like it was yesterday. I can see it. But I don't remember what would happen after that. I can remember coming home. I can remember at one time my mom telling me that I was sleepwalking in my room and her waking me up. That I can remember. I remember getting into bed with my sister after these incidences. I remember another time seeing the little gray man outdoors, calling me over. He was at the tree trunk and he was calling me over. My sister also saw it outdoors in a tree at one point. And after the Netflix show came out, I never mentioned this on Netflix. It didn't come out on Netflix. I had a young, or not, she's not so young anymore, but she's my age now. But she had a sister who lived down the street from me, down the river actually from me, in the same town of Great Barrington. And she said to me, do you know my sister, she used to have these little men come into our room. And I couldn't believe it when she told me that, because she described the same situation that was happening to her sister that was happening to me. But her parents believed her. My parents didn't believe me. Her parents believed her. And they moved. They actually moved from Great Barrington up to Stockbridge, and it stopped happening to her sister. But my parents didn't believe me. I was actually punished for it. I was locked in the basement for it. They didn't want to hear it. My father put 5 bolt locks on the closet door just so that he could try and get some sleep. It didn't work. It's not going to keep him out. Nothing's going to keep him out. So this went on, I would say, until the big event of '69. And then I had maybe 2 or 3 events that I can remember after that.
Okay. The one I want to talk about, was there an occurrence that actually happened on the same day that Thom and his family experienced theirs?
That was the 1969 event. And that was, my sister and I did not want to go with my parents that day because we had to work all weekend. Ironically, Thom and I, we were always like ships in the night passing. We found out after I met up with him after doing the Unsolved Mysteries. We worked in the same places. Thom's younger than I am. We both worked at Jug Inn, another hot spot. There's a lot of sightings at Jug Inn. Thom worked there. I worked there. We both worked at the Mahaly Theater. And I was working there that weekend with my sister. We did not want to go to get ice cream, but we decided, my parents forced us into going to get ice cream. So we went and we got ice cream. We went up to Lake Mansfield, and we backed into the lake, and we looked over to the right where you see all those trees, and this big bright light. It was like a red, amber, bronze light. There were other colors like in the middle, these bizarre colors in the middle, but I didn't pay as much attention to them because it was this brilliant orange amber light that just was like so bright that I really was looking at that, and it was huge. It was giant. It was humongous, and I knew that they were coming for me. And everybody was screaming, and my father was like, "Holy shit, excuse my language. I'm sorry, but that's what he said." And my mother was screaming, and my father was like, "I have to chase this thing." And we're going, "No, Dad, no." And my mother's going, "No, Joey, no." Everybody was screaming in the car. And I remember my sister and I, we put our heads down, and everybody was crying. And my dad started chasing it, and the next thing I knew, I was levitating out of the car, and I started levitating towards, it was Berkshire Heights. And I was flipped over though, because I remember being on my back. And once again, you cannot move your head. You cannot move your head. And it was just my eyes, but I knew it was Berkshire Heights because I could see the houses. And ironically, after Netflix, another person called me from California that I never mentioned Berkshire Heights, but this person lived on Berkshire Heights. And this person said to me, would you please, I don't think you'll remember me because you were much older than me, but would you please call my brother? They left a message on my husband's machine because they could find him because of his business. That's how they found him. I knew Melanie when I was a young girl, and my brother knew her. And my brother had a horrendous experience up on Berkshire Heights in 1970. Would she please talk to my brother because he's been traumatized ever since? And would she please talk to him because the same thing happened to him up on Berkshire Heights? So it's that whole area. There's something going on. There's a portal in this whole area.
Can you
It's
tell us,
crazy.
Melanie, can you specify a little bit on what happened wherever you were taken? Can you tell us what happened where you were taken?
Sure. What happened that I can remember, and I ended up in what I don't know whether it was a ship or whether it was some type of a warehouse or what, but it was industrial. It seemed like it was industrial. And I was in a room on a table, and there were like these glass type bricks, almost metallic. But do you remember those 1950, 1960s glass bricks that they used to have that you could see through? It was almost as if there was one wall like that, and then the other wall was metallic, and you could see that amber color coming through those bricks. And I don't know, I don't remember anybody being in that room, and I don't know what they did to me or what was going on, but I didn't see anyone in that room. I was so frightened. I was so scared that I don't remember. I blocked it. And then I remember being in another room that was full of children. Full of children. I didn't know any of these children. I remember I was holding on to my knees. My knees were up to my chest. I remember what I was wearing. I had on cut-off jeans, bare feet, and a lime green shirt. It was a sweatshirt. It's one of my favorite shirts back then. And I remember the children, Tom Reed and another woman said that they saw me. I didn't know them, or not Tom Reed, Tom Warner, but I didn't know them. I did not know these people, so I didn't see them. They said they saw me, but I didn't see them because I didn't know them. But I saw people, but I did not know any of these people. They were not classmates of mine or anyone that I knew. And
Right.
then they just disappeared one by one by one. And then I woke up and I was on the lake, on the beach, and my parents were gone. And I had to walk home. I had really bad stomach pains, really, really bad stomach pains. I had to walk home on the dirt road. The sun, it was like in the, in the fall, right before the sun comes up, and the sun was just starting to come up. It's dusk, where it's just, or dawn, I guess you would say dawn, when the sun is just first coming up. So I started walking home, and my mom always locked the door, always. She still does. But the door was not locked at home. It's like a 5 or 10 minute walk to get home to there on Castle Street. We used to go there all the time, quick walk. And the door was unlocked. Everybody was asleep. I climbed in bed with my sister because I was so scared. And then we were told not to talk about it, never to talk about it. And then 3 years, well, it's what, 4 years now. 4 years ago, my mother called me and told me that I needed to go to the Historical Society and tell them what happened up at Lake Mansfield. And she told my sister too. And both my sister and I were like, what are you talking about? You told us that never happened and not to talk about it. And we were like, what, this is nuts, Mom. You told us it never happened. And we knew that it had happened with the little gray man and everything that happened. But now she's telling us that it really did happen after she told us that we were crazy and it never did happen. And then I had run into Tom Warner, and who I didn't know, but I ran into him at the Big Y, and it was like, wow, I know that guy. I had seen him before. And then I had heard he was writing a book, and I had contacted him to buy his book for my husband. One thing led to another, and he called me and he said, can I meet with you? I want to talk to you about something. And then he was like, this happened. And so then I heard it from him, and I'm like, yeah, I know this happened, but now I'm hearing it from somebody else. It was too weird. And then I met Tom Reed, and he was telling me that he had heard my mother and my brother talking about this back in, what year was it, Tom?
About 2013 or so, 14 maybe.
On a radio show.
Yeah, I had Lauren Cutts had contacted me. I was in Portland, Oregon, and your mother had gotten on the phone with me, and I put her on the phone with Lauren Cutts, and that's when I had gotten a number for your brother, Mark, and I think they spoke a little bit. So yeah, it was. And actually, when I was contacted by Cindy Boyle from Unsolved Mysteries, a segment producer, I had actually given them your brother's number, and I think your brother's phone number, and that's how I guess you had gotten on the show rather than Mark, because I think you had better recall in the whole bit, and you're more interested in telling sharing your event or your encounter than he was. I think he wanted money. I don't know. That sound about right?
I'm not close with him, but anyways, so needless to say, I ended up having to go for a whole series of PTSD hypnotherapy, which they don't do in one session. It's a long, drawn out session because it was pretty traumatizing, the whole thing, not only being lied to about it, but having to come to terms with everything that happened to, and then being told that it was all in your head and you were crazy for all those years. And then finally knowing that, hey, this really did happen to me. And I was not only violated by my family, but I was violated by these entities. But I've met a lot of really great people in the process of all of this, and the healing process has been pretty good. And I'm doing a lot of research to find out what is going on here, because there's definitely something going on here in Berkshire County.
That's for sure.
Melanie, if I may, have you ever been regressed? Have you ever tried that type of thing?
With hypnosis?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have. I did, I would say 12 weeks.
12 weeks. And I mean, did anything come out of that in terms of, memory recall or anything like that of any significance?
A lot has come out, so much so that I had to stop doing it, and it still comes out. It doesn't stop coming out. It comes out, keeps coming out. In fact, they have to prepare you for 3 or 4 weeks before they'll put you under. They prepare you for what you're going to see. It's scary. It's a really scary thing to do.
So you're going to tell us that these little gray beings had 3 fingers. Can
They
you
did.
describe anything more about their anatomy?
Just that they were very, very small. In fact, before I was told that this actually happened, I thought that they could have been the little people from the First Nations people. I thought they might have been entities from King Philip's War. I even went out to South Dakota to research the little people from King Philip's War, because that took place around the Housatonic River. I mean, the Great Wigwam was where the Congregational Church is in Great Barrington, located right near the Housatonic River. So I did a lot of research on that. Took me all the way out to South Dakota to find out if that could be what was going on. And then when I found all this out, I'm like, no, that's not the little people. I don't think so.
So what did their anatomy look like? What color were they?
They were the grays, definitely the grays, with the eyes and the little face with the little mouth, the little. And I can remember the man would point. I can remember him. Mental telepathy. It's always mental telepathy. They don't talk. It's always mental telepathy or motions. And the sound, I remember the sound. There's no sound being made except for in your brain. It's always in your mind. And there's like a clicking. There was like a hum or clicking sound. And I still have this click, click, clicking sound, like an MRI sound. And I get that at nighttime still, at night. It's a click, 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 click sound, and I can't get rid of it at night. It drives me crazy. I've had MRIs just to find out what it is, and I can't get rid of it.
Hmm.
You have that too, don't you, Thom?
I remember hearing kind of a high pitched, like stones tapping underneath the fender wall at the time that we had come across the vessel, if you will, or actually the white sphere at first, and it was like a tap 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 tap. But it was high pitched. Like I said, it was like stones getting picked up in your tires and then hitting underneath your fender wall, and then actually during what I would reference as an exam, I guess, I remember a tapping sound, more reminisce, if you will, of an MRI machine, where it was da 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 da. And the reason I really remember that is because I've had MRIs, and I couldn't help but almost feel uncomfortable. You get a chill down your back, your arms. You're like, oh my God, right? It kind of brings you back. Mm-hmm. So as often as I've said, the event itself wasn't horrible. It was more the on world that bothered us more than the off world. There are times when I get taken back to that moment, and I'm more, bothered by it than I originally thought I would be. Like when I walk down the dirt road, when we're at the park, I'm fine. But when I go down near the telephone pole, it gets pretty hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question in the chat for you, Melanie, I have to address. How do you know if the person conducting the regression did not plant these memories? Were there any precautions taken so you can tell that they were real ones?
Because my husband filmed it.
Okay, so you had a witness. Good.
I have it on film.
Good. Thank you for answering the question. Tommy?
Well, Melanie, if I may, since you have had these experiences for such a long period of time, and basically your entire life at this point, do you have any theories or thoughts on exactly who the Greys are, where they're from, and possibly even what their agenda could be?
I have no idea. Like I said to you, I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, Tom has a theory that it could be government because we have so many government. We've got General Electric around here. We've got the Sprague Company around here. We've got Lockheed Martin around here. We've got a lot of government around here. We've got a lot of minerals. We've got quartz. We've got, what are the other minerals that we have besides a lot of quartz around here?
I don't know about the minerals so much as you do. That's something you're looking into, but something I think is relevant is the fact that the goodwill message was actually manufactured by those who ate in our diner and those that, were around us, involuntarily, our paths crossed, and that it was left on the moon just like six weeks prior to,
July 16th, that was left on the moon.
Actually, it was the 20th. It was left on the 20th.
20th?
The Apollo left on the 16th. It was actually placed on the 20th by Buzz Aldrin, and so with the mining in Canaan, the lime, I believe, was used in Oak Ridge when they manufactured the atom bomb. So there was a plutonium spill there of some kind, and then just the whole area. I mean, NASA was in Boston at the time. People don't realize that there was a lot of money being invested into the Berkshires for the manufacturing facility. So there's so many different things. I do believe that there is a mining interest. I do believe that there is something to that. I think it's a multiple of things. I think there's more than one reason for the activity that has been consistent since the 50s and even more recently. There was actually an actress who from Housewives who had just seen and went public with her sighting, and she's from Great Barrington. What's her name? Do you remember her name?
Dorinda.
Yes. She lives in Great Barrington.
I know her because my brother was friends with her brother. Dorinda, it'll come to me.
Yeah, it's all right. But yeah, so there's a lot of activity, and there always has been. And then you have the the crop circles in 2013 and 14 that showed up in Sheffield, the spheres that are seen throughout. So whatever it is, if it was something random or something that was just connected to government, if you will, back in the 60s, that would have been long cleared up by now. But for the activity to continue for 50 to 60 years, there has got to be something more relevant, something that is needed in that area, because they would have moved on, right? Things would have shifted. There wouldn't continually be this activity, year after year after year. If what we experienced was part of a project, that would have been over and done with.
Exactly. And there have just been 2 more sightings this month or last month, March, in Glendale, over in the Cherry Hill area, again, where Jane Green saw her sighting.
So, if I may, Melanie, I understand that you've been researching and actually checking out the geology of the area, and you think that it could be somehow related to that, or
the sandstones. I'm thinking, the sandstones that are in the area, they are all lined up. The sandstones in this area around the world, they're all in line, all of them. It's interesting, and these all go back to the First Nations people again. So I find that interesting. And I had no idea that a lot of these stones that are around here had to do with the First Nations people. And I have some of them right here on my own property. And I find it amazing. Now I look at stones differently. I used to hike past them and not even see what they were, but now you take a look at them and you can see the shapes of them and what they are. But I never looked at it before like that. I just took it for granted that they were just stones covered in moss. But if you look at the Mayan ruins and how people would walk past them before they were excavated or people looked at them, the same thing is happening here, but we never paid attention to it. So yes, we've been doing a lot of research, Wendy and I, and we've been doing a lot of interviewing with people in this area, and they don't even know each other. The people that we've been interviewing that used to live around here and no longer live around here. And it's amazing what they're telling us because they don't know each other. And they're telling us the same exact episodes or experiences that we're hearing from each other. And there's no way that they could possibly know what one person has told us and another person has told us. It's amazing. So there's definitely a portal here of some sort. And it's always the Housatonic River, Lake Mansfield, Monument Mountain,
Hudson River
Mountain area, all the same.
Yeah, the Hudson River Valley is really
Hudson
active.
River Valley,
Yeah.
another one.
I mean, that's right there too. We're only maybe, as far as the crow flies, we're looking at what, a half an hour away.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Whitley Strieber's account happened in northern Hudson Valley. So, yeah, that was a major abduction event as well.
Yeah. Sheffield, for people who don't know, Sheffield is only about an hour and 20 minutes from New York City.
Yeah.
Wow.
People don't realize that. It also has one of the higher elevations. And there were Nike missile sites, Minuteman missile sites. The NORAD towers are there. And the classification that it was given was actually, you mentioned Jug End. Jug End is
That's
where
a
the
big
CE
hotspot.
classification came from the witnesses playing golf there, which is, it's a small little town. It's all kind of all part of Great Barrington, Marlborough, Jug End, Sheffield. It's all within, I'm going to say, 4 or 5 minutes from Great Barrington. They have different names because they're like different, subsidiaries of the town, but it's really all part of Great
It's all
Barrington.
Berkshire County.
Yeah.
It's all part of Berkshire County. And Jug End, where that pond is up there, there's been a lot of sightings. A lot of people have told me about sightings up there.
Yeah. Something else that if you don't mind me jumping in here,
No,
Melanie and I also, Melanie used to eat at her diner. People, I don't know if people know that, but she used to. There wasn't grilled cheese sandwiches with onions, I think, right? So something like
red onions.
yeah. But we were also in cars with our families, which also is kind of something that we kind of share that little bond thing, because my mother and grandmother and brother were with me, and her brother and father was with her. So we were both in vehicles over water about the same time. So when she encountered this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was it was getting dusk, but it wasn't dark yet.
Right.
And so at the time that, she encountered this was probably about a half an hour, 45 minutes before we did. So that, and we're both in cars.
Wow.
And Lake Mansfield is what, 5 miles from where I was. So
It's all
you're looking
close.
at a 5-minute drive, maybe 7 best because of lights. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. That lake, I used to go there as a child. I used to swim there all the time. There used to be a dock out there, and you could like swim out to the dock and jump off and swim back. And that lake is only probably, I'm going to guess, 5 to 7 minutes from the UFO park.
Wow. Cool.
we're going to be interviewing a woman that has some stories to tell us about that this Wednesday.
And you know about the corn, Melanie, right? You could share about the corn?
About the crops,
No, the large corn that grows.
you know better, you know more about it than me.
Yeah.
You should
I
tell
think-
about that.
Yeah,
But that-
Tim knows.
And also talk about the crops.
Yeah, some of the corn that grows where the incident took place is almost as long as your arm. I think you've seen some of those pictures in the past, Tim.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so there is actually a physical change to some of the area. There's spots where nothing will grow, and then there's spots where things tend to grow larger than they should. And again, there were over, I think, 250 witnesses. This went out on WSBS radio.
Mhm.
That letter and so on is in the Roswell Museum. It was given a classification. There were, my God, witnesses from 5 or 6 different communities. So this was a pretty big sighting, but back in the day, we didn't really, by the way, this is really interesting. Just about 2 weeks ago, the incident, or one of them in 1967, that was our family was involved with too. The one that we talked about in the diner was just rerun in the Berkshire Eagle. They reran the article
Oh, yeah,
about the
you
sighting
showed
in
me that, yeah.
1967. So in the past, I've mentioned a lot about 69, but I've also said how 69 kind of put a bow around it. So many people had seen it. They were like, oh my God, we're so sorry we didn't believe you, kind of thing. So 69 was kind of that, they put a bow, those people were now listening to their friends on the radio who are now witnesses. So it wasn't just, the guys who owned a diner were talking about something that they thought was bizarre. But now since they reran the article, I think that's, well, not only is it going to be in a new Travel Channel special, but that article, I think, really speaks to the amount of activity, because you're talking about a town with like 3,000 people. And this made a major newspaper, the sister newspaper to the Boston Globe, in 1967. So, but aside from a couple articles and an AM radio station, there really was no source of news. We weren't near a big city.
Well, I think if you and I went up, if we did take the time to go up to the Berkshire Athenaeum the next time you're back here, I think if we went and looked through the Berkshire Courier, we would find something, because that was the newspaper that was in town at the time.
And don't you find it funny that our articles out there, yet Unsolved Mysteries didn't run one, which I thought was kind of interesting. But we were able to, and this is the thing too. It wasn't like like you said, we should go look. But
nobody would think about that, the Berkshire Courier, because I think you and Tom were probably too young to even remember that the Courier even existed then.
I didn't know. Yeah.
Do you even remember it? I remember it because I was older than you.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it.
Yeah. But there are articles out there. They're floating around, and we're starting to find them.
And I think we will find something in the Courier. I remember knowing someone that even worked for the Courier back then. So,
hey, Melanie, I want to go back a little bit, because there's something I want to ask you. Did you experience any physical trauma, any marks like what Thom has on his wrists, anything like that in relationship to your encounters?
Anything. I had my tear ducts. I had problems with my tear ducts, my sinuses. I had really bad scarring in my sinuses. I had to have surgery in my sinuses. And when I was out, when they were wheeling me out, the doctor said to my husband, what happened to her sinuses? It was completely closed. One of my sinuses, that he had to open it up. And he said, did she have surgery on her sinus before? Because it was completely closed. And Henry said, no, she's never had sinus surgery before. And he said it was completely closed up. He had to reopen it. It was so scarred.
Wow.
And then I have one spot on my eye that's so scarred that when I put eyeliner on, I can't even go over it with the eyeliner. It's so scarred.
Wow. So that's mainly is that
and
mainly?
Then I've been struck by lightning 3 times. I don't know why. And I set off alarms, and I shut down lights. I shut down electrical, like my television, computers. I shut down electrical things all the time. I can't get through the airport without shutting down the alarm, going through the customs alarm. It's hard. It's hard for me. Going in stores, I shut down the conveyor belt, when I'm going through the grocery supermarket. It's not all the time, but it's usually, especially during a full moon or a new moon, my energy is really high.
If you happen to know the answer, I mean, maybe not, but you mentioned that you've had some MRIs and things like that, those kinds of scans. Have they ever found any kind of any foreign implants in your body that you know about?
Right.
No, but I never had my chest area done. I've only had my head and my leg area done, and they never found anything there that they had said. And it's usually up here that rings when I go through at the airport. They always find right here.
Right. So that maybe should be a point of interest for some type of scan or something, Melanie, in the future. So if you're wanting to know what that is. Now, Melanie gave me a clip that I'm going to play real quick in regards to her affecting electronics. This will mute your mics while it's playing, so we won't be able to hear you on the panel. So here we go.
Okay, we got to film this because the lights are acting really funny. And Mel's being felt hypersensitive as far as her skin is concerned. She set off the car alarm yesterday.
In the parking lot.
You know, on the car next door.
Okay, Al Cooley, we got to send this to Al. This is what I do,
this is
Al.
one of the things that happens. Weird.
So that is an example of her affecting lights.
That's really
Now,
something.
Melanie, you were telling me about how you're walking down the street and you're popping the lights. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, I was in Mexico with my mom and dad and Henry one time. And I can feel it when this is going to happen. I mean, I've said it to Thom before. I've joked with him that something was going to happen. So he knows because he's been with me before. And I'll shut down the computer. And I said to my mom, I said, see those lights? They're going to blow. They were on the ground. We were in Mexico walking on the beach, and they had these lights on the beach. So they're all going to blow. I can feel it. I can feel my energy. She goes, you're crazy. You're just nuts. You're so weird. You never change. Sure enough, pop, 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 pop. They all popped. And I said, see, I told you. She goes, you just never change. And they did. And by the way, Thom, I found that photograph that.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that. So Melanie and I were actually on a podcast, maybe about 8-9 months ago, and it was the strangest thing because I had actually just snapped a couple of pictures, of the interview, and afterwards you could actually see an entity leaning over her sofa behind her.
Wow.
And it was the strangest thing. And I kept thinking to myself, did somebody hack into the podcast? I mean, I couldn't make any sense of it. But the really interesting thing was that you could actually see that individual leaning over her sofa. It wasn't like a superimposed type of thing. And if you've got the photo, that to me was quite telling. I mean, that's a hard one to make sense of. I know when I try to rule things out or look into things, I look at, I start that list. I know what it's not, and then it just comes to that time where you got to kind of label it, what is it? And it was so vivid, and yet we couldn't see it by the naked eye, but the camera picked it up. And so I'm glad you have that, because if you do have it, that's something you might want to know.
Again. And if I had known
Send it to me.
was there, I'm telling you, I would never have been able to finish the interview. I would have had a heart attack.
Just send it to Tim if you can.
Yeah.
Or Tom.
I can't do it right now because I'll do it. I will send it to you, Tim. It just
Okay.
It just scared me so
Yeah,
much.
it is so vivid. I mean, there's no mistaking that there's someone behind her sofa, and there was nobody there. And right, Melanie, there was nobody at your house.
It was frightening.
Mhm.
It was just one more thing, and I was home alone. I had the dogs with me, but with the dogs, they were barking for a while too, weren't they? Because I remember I had to let them outside.
Yeah, probably. I think so. Yeah.
They
But
got-
again, this was somebody that showed up in a picture after the fact when we sat there and watched it. The podcast, well, part of the podcast, and there was no sign of this individual. But on the photo, it showed up, which was, to me, it's hard to get my head around.
That's very different, isn't it? Melanie, if I may, you mentioned that I believe that you have children.
Yes, I do. I have 3.
And have they had any kind of shared experiences or similar experiences to the ones that you've described tonight?
One of them has had experiences.
Okay. We found that a lot of times, in fact, most often it's generational. So if a person has experiences, then normally someone in their like a parent or a grandparent or whatever has actually also had those experiences. So that's the reason I was asking, what type of experience has your child had?
Well, he's older now, but when he was out and when he was cross country, he had an experience where I don't really want to talk about it because it's really his
Okay.
business. So,
Right.
but he did have an experience, and I believe his son and his wife believes that his son probably has had an experience when he was a child. He's just a baby. He's had an experience too with his wife.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's happened. That has happened.
Can you talk about the significance of the owl that keeps following you around and watching you through your window?
Yeah, that's pretty freaky, that owl. In fact, we had a girl that was staying on our property. She had a tiny house that was up here. She was going to stay on the property for the whole summer. And she was here until like July 4th, I would say. She was going to stay until September. I came home one day and she was moving all her stuff out. And I said, Leah, what's going on? Why are you leaving? And she said, I can't take it anymore. I said, why? Take what? She goes, I can't take that owl. It's too creepy. Owls are not supposed to be following you around like this, especially in the daytime. It's bombing the dogs. It's just everywhere. Every time I turn around, it's outside my door. It's looking in the windows. It's everywhere, that owl. I just can't take it. It's just too frightening. So she left because of the owl.
Well, so this is the owl then, this one right here.
It torments the dogs.
I do know that there has been claims of people saying that screen memories that have been put into people's heads mimic owls, and they also mimic like wolves and other animals, but a lot an owl is depicted. Do you wonder if there's a connection between this owl and the beings that are interacting with you?
Well, that photo there, that owl was watching me through my bathroom window. It was on the second floor looking right in my bathroom window that day. It didn't move. It didn't budge. Even when I took the photo, it just stood there right on that branch looking in at me, even after I took the photo.
Do you think there's a connection?
It's too strange that it just is always there watching us
Right.
for years.
Okay, now one thing I was going to ask you, is it the Housatonic swamp that's located in the triangle in
I
Massachusetts?
don't, you're thinking of the Taunton, Massachusetts triangle. That's where your friend that does the show with you, Tom, lives, in Taunton, Mass.
Yeah, but I think Tim's referring to the Housatonic, correct?
Yes. Yep.
The Housatonic River, but I don't think that that's part of the Taunton triangle.
No, it's not. But he's asking about a swamp, right? And that's connected to the Housatonic?
Right. It's called the Housatonic Swamp. And,
I don't know where that is. Do you know what town that's in?
I can't.
There is a swamp in Stockbridge that is Umpachini Pond, I think. We were just talking about.
I don't know where the swamp is, Tim. I've never heard of it, actually. I'm sorry.
Okay. My friend Paranormal Underworld, who's in the chat, knows about the swamp, and if I can get him to answer, maybe he can tell me. But yes, it's there's a swamp there that was involved with the King Philip's War, and they attacked the natives, and they drove them into the swamps, or they went into the swamps to hide from the troops, and they ended up getting taken out. And there's a lot of UFO sightings in that area, and it's right along I think it's along that river.
Yeah, it would have to be.
Then
Yeah.
it's got to be where Chief Umpachini. That has to be right. I know exactly then.
It's
where it
this
is.
one, the Hockomock Swamp. Sorry, I
Whoa,
misspoke.
okay. Never heard of it. I haven't lived in that area since, I was like 17. So,
It must be where near Riverbrook School is then.
okay, well,
Go down Ice Glen Road. I think it's right near there. Because we were just talking about going down there to look at that, where that is, because there have been a lot of sightings there.
Paranormal Underworld says, Melanie, that owl could be your spirit animal.
Well, I've been told by shamanic healers that my spirit guide is a jaguar. So,
Okay. Tommy?
It's very interesting. I mean, the owl itself. I mean, they have a pretty good lifespan, so I'm sure it's several years or whatever. But it is interesting how it's number one out there during the day, which owls typically are nocturnal, and also if they're bombing the dogs and that kind of thing on a regular basis, that's just strange behavior for an owl. I mean, I lived in Florida for many years, and I've seen owls, all kinds of different types of owls, different species, and all that. They're all, they all have their quirks and their the things that they do, but that's unusual to be sort of having an attack owl, if you will,
they
especially during the day.
torment the dogs. It teases the dogs.
It just might be a psychotic owl. Although that would be really rare, but you never know, But for one to just sit there and stare at you all day, that's odd. So that's
is
why
odd.
I wondered if there was a connection.
stalker owl.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
Melanie, we were talking on the phone or on Facebook Messenger in regards to your latest encounter, which was actually a dream or
Oh my
perhaps
God,
a
I haven't even
recollection.
told Thom that yet. Last Friday? Yes, it was last Friday. Oh my God, Thom, I can't believe I haven't even told you this yet. I was on the couch sleeping. I didn't even tell you. I also saw a shadow figure up in my room too. Right before that, scared the hell out of me. Okay, Josiah, my grandson, was spending the night, and when he spends the night, I usually sleep down on the couch because my husband Henry and Josiah, they're restless sleepers, and I get a foot in the head. He's only 3, and Henry's ripping the covers off, so I just come down and sleep on the couch. And I was sound asleep, I thought, and the next thing I knew, I'm levitating in the room, and I got these little gray men in my room, but I think it was a dream because I could move my head this time. Usually if it's happening, I can't move my head, but this time I could move my head because I could see the grays in the living room. And I remember calling to Henry and Josiah and saying, help me, get me down. But I have a post and beam house, so it's a cathedral ceiling. And I remember being up there, but I could move my head and I could see the couch and I could see the living room. And I could see my old dog and my other dog who was sleeping beside me on the floor. And she was down there and they were looking up at me. And I remember calling to them. And then the next thing I knew, it was the morning and I was in the bathroom. And I'm like, what the hell happened? Did I dream this or did this really happen? Because I was in the bathroom. And Josiah was coming down the stairs and I said, Did Grammy wake you up last night? Did you come down to see Grammy last night? And he goes, no. It was too weird. It was really weird. And then I asked Henry, did I call you last night? Did you come down and wake me up? And he said, no. It was the strangest thing that happened to me. Another time, he woke me up. I was screaming in my sleep. I was standing in front of the French doors and there was a bright light outside, and I was being pulled out in my nightgown, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was just being pulled outdoors to this bright light. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and Henry had to wake me up because I was screaming so loud, and he woke me up, and I came to. But I had some pretty bad dreams, really bad dreams. But that was the latest one last week.
Tell everybody how all of this has affected you throughout your life now. How you feel about going outside at night and all that.
Well, after hearing that there's been so many sightings in Glendale lately, Henry's been putting the chickens away from me. I don't like looking up at the sky. And it wasn't until Thom told me that a lot of the made for television films were made for television for Hollywood, the UFO films, that I could watch some of them because I couldn't watch any of them before. So Tom Reed was the one that gave me the okay to watch some of them. Otherwise, I couldn't watch any of them before because it was really like opening up a wound for me.
But you have to face it, right? You got to face it.
Yeah. I mean, Thom has really helped me come a long way with a lot of this. He's been a good support system for me.
Thanks.
I mean, he's also helped me with the reality films, the real films too. He's helped me with those. I mean, he's brought me a long way with all of this. That I'm okay. I'm going to
Well, the
live.
thing is, too, I don't, we were fortunate, or at least I was, that I had, I could talk to my mother and my grandmother and my brother, and they were supportive. And the diner when I was young was like open forum to discuss a lot of what was taking place, whereas Melanie didn't have anybody. And if she spoke about it, and my heart goes out to her. I mean, she was actually really, truly locked in her basement, and not like one day. I mean, it was tragic. And so for her to try to feel comfortable coming out and talking about this, even if it's 20 or 30 years later, there's scars. There are a lot of scars.
50 some years.
And yeah. And so for that, I don't know what other advice you could give somebody. It's time. It's time to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the easier it's going to be to put it together, put those pieces of the puzzle together. And also there's, you start to put a little more of a time frame to it, and it starts to be easier to understand because the more you talk about it, the more you go, oh, wow, I didn't think about that before, or that kind of
right.
thing. So,
you recollect things that you didn't mention before, right?
Yeah.
And the benefit of having shared experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. To me, it's always been, it always takes a very special, very courageous person to come out with their story. I know as a government employee, I kept mine very close to the vest for decades until I was out of government service and in the private sector and felt that I needed to tell my story. So I understand that what it really takes to do that. It takes a lot of guts, frankly. It really does, Melanie. And, for you to come out like that. And I mean, have you ever had anyone react to you negatively because you've told your story?
I don't talk about it as often as my husband Henry talks about it more than I do. The only people that I really talk to, I've always spoken about it to my friends, my really close friends have always known about it. Or I talk to Thom about it, or people that ask me to talk about it, that ask me to do a show, I will talk about it. But I don't show up at a dinner party and say, oh, by the way, I'm Melanie that was on Unsolved Mysteries. I don't go there. Henry will, but I don't talk about it like that. I just don't do that.
So you do have a fear of going out at night and looking up at the night sky, and this is all directly related to what happened to you and is currently happening to you, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Tommy?
Well, I was just going to ask, Unsolved Mysteries, what other programs have you been featured on?
I haven't done a lot of film but a lot of radio or podcasts I've done.
Yes, Theory.
Yes Theory we did do together. I've done a lot of podcasts with Thom. He usually invites me.
You were actually invited to do a show on Fox, but they pulled out at the last minute.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
I got a question though.
Thom.
So when it comes to certain areas, when I'm in Sheffield and I walk down that road where our car was parked that night, I get a very almost a haunting undertow kind of feeling, like almost I got this weird feeling like it's silly maybe, but I get a feeling like I'm watched, like there's someone in the woods, that whole creepiness hits me. That's the type of feeling I get, almost really uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if that's similar to anything that you might experience when you're at Lake Mansfield.
I don't even go up to Lake Mansfield anymore.
And because
I think I showed you that photograph that I took when I left there last year for the anniversary that I was up there. I picked up the orb there, and then I went back to my house that I used to live at there, and there's an orb on the video there that flies right past my house.
okay, so when you were there taking those photos, how did you feel?
I don't feel good. That's why I don't go there.
Right, but how do you? What is it physically that happens to you?
It's eerie. I mean, we also lost a friend up there, remember?
Right.
It's just an eerie place. It's not a good feeling, that place. It brings back bad memories.
Right.
The whole
But
area.
do you physically feel sick or
Yeah.
feel you do, right? Yeah. Now about your eyes too, we both have the same eye issue.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. I've had
You
5
can't
surgeries
see
on my
where
eyes, which is why I wear glasses a lot. I got a big scar along my right
We
eye.
both have had cataract surgery a number of times. And it doesn't work.
Is that directly related to the encounters?
I don't know,
Oh.
but it doesn't work every time we've had it. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I've had my eyes are not just cataracts. Mine are just a mess. I mean, I have detached retinas and everything else. So I've had to have my retinas reattached, and for some reason my retina was no longer. I think it was a retina was no longer perfectly round. It was, but I just, when I think of Melanie, I remember her coming into our diner. I remember as a child, we both worked at this. It was crazy. It's like I almost followed her. Like I was been a stalker of her since I was like 9 years old. I worked at Mojave Theater right after she did. I worked at Jug End right after she did. We were both in the car that night. We both had family. We were both over water. We both had the same sinus issues, the same eye issues.
You hung out at Umpachini Falls too, correct?
Yeah. So it is kind of it mirrors. We mirror each other's experience. It's with such detail that it's uncanny, really.
Now, the field that Thom's experience took place in, that whole field is full, or it was full, of Native American artifacts also, that the Muncie tribe has asked people, obviously, to respect and not even go near. Because I know someone that used to live in the house that Thom rents the property off of. A friend of mine, she had inherited that house. She's no longer with us. The house has since been sold to the farmer that lives there. But that field, they used to go in there and they removed a lot of the artifacts, and her cousin had removed them, and she was asked not to by the Muncie tribe, full of Native American artifacts. So that's another reason why you're probably also feeling a lot of there's so much here.
Yeah.
So much going on here between the spiritual atmosphere that's here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there were magnetic anomalies that night. That's been recorded. I think the quartz also is a conductor has some type of magnetic pole associated with it. Am I right about that, Melanie? Didn't you find something out about the quartz
Absolutely.
too?
Yeah, the quartz at Monument Mountain, that whole mountain is full of quartz. And Wendy Ann was telling me that across from Monument Mountain, there's a trail that's all pink quartz, which is
Wow.
very heavy duty. It's
Wow.
very powerful.
So to Melanie's point, she does believe that there's a mining aspect or a mining interest, and she might very well be on point here, because there's been mining in that community since the 40s,
Marble.
and the
marble
government
quartz.
was the ones mining because of the lime for the atom bomb. So there's been government mining in that area for a long time, and if there's an interest with us, maybe there's an interest elsewhere. And then you've got, there's a lot of history there. You still find arrowheads. I mean, there's been so again, I kind of think she's right about the mining aspect of this thing. We have different opinions on what this is about. I've always
We
said that
don't know. I mean, no one knows. We don't know. We're being open-minded about it. We're going to keep researching until we find out. Maybe we'll never find out, but there's something going on. You and I
Right.
always said we don't know what happened. We know something happened, but we don't know what happened.
and
Something happened.
that holds true to the 2015 when they inducted this as being historically true. I mean, there was no question going back and looking at getting testimony and that sort of thing that we all were witness to something. Something happened. And there's never been any question. It was simply a matter of what was it, and it wasn't until 2015 that they actually took the initiative to actually induct it as a UFO incident. But yeah, so
Well,
again,
unidentified flying object. But what was
Right.
it? What is it?
Right. Right. And there were over 250 witnesses too,
Oh,
correct?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
substantial for a
And
massive
it's still
sighting.
coming forward today, so that makes even more people.
Wow, that's just phenomenal. That area is really active, and I'd really like to take a trip there someday, and I might just do that.
yeah, it's not
Um,
far from the Betty and Barney Hill incident. It's not far from the other incident in the Boston area, and then there was one in I think it was Westfield that was also quite phenomenal or profound, if you will, in the 60s. So who knows? Yeah, and
Yeah,
Bantam.
I might come up there, Tom, and paint your covered bridge the colors of your inner space logo.
Yeah, Sheffield will love that.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
Tommy, any last words?
We just want to thank our guests for coming this evening. Very interesting stories, Tom. As always, thank you for being here. And
Thanks, man.
Melanie, very nice to meet you. Our audience really enjoyed your stories. In fact, I
Thank
want to
you.
thank the audience for coming out. As always, the chatters out there, thanks for being here, folks. Remember that we're doing another show. We'll be doing the UFO Men Show next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Come check us out with that. And we're going to be expanding out and doing some very interesting things with that program. So we hope you join us. And again, just want to thank everybody for coming out as always.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys.
It's
Thank
good to see you.
Welcome. And I want to say thank you to our paid members on UFO Man. And here they are. If you'd like to join our channel, it's only $1.99 a month. You get some really cool emojis and some perks. So check it out. It would really help us out. In regards to everybody who watched online, thank you. And everybody who participated in the chat room, thank you as well. And from Tommy and myself and everyone on the panel, good night.
you.